Hey YouTube, it's Adrian. Just before we get you to this video, do me a favor and head over to pageantlaunch.com. We are starting the world's first dedicated pageant review site, and I would love for you to join our launch team. All you need to do is put in your email address. It's completely free. We are looking to make a pageant industry that is safe, transparent, and fair. I know it's like that most of the time, but over the last year, it's become very evident that it's not like that all of the time. So head over to pageantlaunch.com, put in your email address, and let's get you to this video.
I'm Laura Clark, Director of International News and the Miss Earth USA pageant, and this is my interview with the Pageant Project.
Hey everyone, it's Adrian from the Pageant Project with you, and I have a very special guest today. I always say that, but today it's definitely the case. Laura Clark, who is Director of both Miss Earth USA and the International Ms. System. Laura, welcome to the show.
Thank you for having me.
Now, there's a lot to cover here. And for you guys tuning in, if you have any questions, if you haven't watched any of my interviews before, feel free to put your questions in the comments, whether you're watching on Facebook, YouTube, or Twitch, and I'll pass them on to Laura. But Laura, I tend to start with pageant history, but why don't we start with where you are first? Because I'm in Australia. Obviously, your systems are American, but you're in neither of those places. So whereabouts are you at the moment?
Right. So I live currently in Switzerland, which is in the middle of Europe, north of Italy. A lot of people confuse Switzerland with Sweden, which is way north and very cold. So we're in the beautiful country of Switzerland while my husband is completing a government assignment. And originally I'm from the USA, where we most recently lived near Washington, D.C.
Right. And what's the weather like in Switzerland at the moment? Dare I ask? Is it sunny?
Yeah. Oh my gosh, it's wonderful. It's about 1:00 p.m. afternoon here, and 80 degrees, no breeze, lots of sun. We're expecting some rain in the coming week, but usually that lasts a day or a couple days and then passes, and it's beautiful again. And it gets a little cold, but where I am, we don't get snow. We can see the snow-capped mountains, but we really don't get snow. I've only been here a year, so that was just
Right.
our experience this past winter.
That sounds quite reasonable. Are you a fan of Swiss chocolate or Swiss watches?
Yes and yes. Both are very excellent here. I mean, the quality of chocolate, and there are chocolate factories in several cities that you can tour, and they just will not stop feeding you chocolate. So we have lots of people waiting in line to visit for the scenery and the chocolate. And then my husband, of course, is obsessed with the Swiss watches. So those
Right.
companies are all very prominent here in Switzerland.
Just out of interest, in Switzerland, do they call it Swiss chocolate or do they just call it chocolate?
No, that is a really good question. I think I haven't really noticed, but I think they really take pride in things being Swiss made. So to them,
Right.
Swiss made, produced in Switzerland is quality, which it is. And they do a really great job here of doing that. So I'm pretty sure they make sure to note that their chocolate is Swiss made.
Right. That makes sense. I mean, it's world renowned, as are their watches. Okay, so that's where you're at the moment. In terms of pageant history, now I do my research before interviews. With yourself, it's a bit difficult because there's so much I've been reading about you, mainly on the directorship side. I've read a little bit about how you got involved with pageantry. I believe you came into it in your 30s, but why don't you tell us in your own words what your pageant history was, how you got started in the industry to begin with?
Sure. Well, it's only been about 10 years now that I've been involved in pageants. Prior to my entry to a pageant as a contestant, I was a dancer, a cheerleader for the NFL, choreographer. My life revolved around game entertainment. I was educated and working in sports marketing. So that was where I thought my career path would go. I founded a company called Going Pro Entertainment. We did consulting and choreography for professional cheerleaders. and sports teams. And when I was about 30 years old, and of course I'd always known about pageants, but it wasn't really common in my circle of friends. I was always super committed to my career as an NFL cheerleader, and anytime the opportunity to compete in a pageant would come up in my early 20s, I just didn't have time for it. So I always just brushed it off, and I had a few friends who did that and succeeded very, very far in that. But after my body could not take being a performer anymore, I was a director and a choreographer, and I met a pageant director while I was in my career in game entertainment, and he just started asking me lots of questions. Are you married? How old are you? you know, all clearly finding out if I was eligible to be in his pageant. And that was for the Ms. United States program. So that was for unmarried women, basically in their 20s and 30s. And so I did enter the state pageant when I was 30. I think I was 30 or 31 years old, and then won the state pageant, and then went on to win the national pageant and become Ms. United States. So of course, I am very behind the scenes type of person. It's always made me very uncomfortable to be in photo shoots, and I love performing on stage and I love that aspect, but I started to really grasp the behind the scenes aspects of pageantry and was asked to get involved in some of the organizational aspects of the pageant, and jumped into a state directorship and then national marketing, worked for Miss World America, worked for Miss United States. And when the opportunity came up to direct for the Miss Earth program, that was a big decision, but I definitely was on board with that. And that's where the majority of my focus is now in my career. I've worked for them for 5 years. And then around the same time, I launched the International Ms. pageant because I had started as a Ms. and felt that the industry didn't really have a lot of opportunities for that age group and those type of women. So, and I had recently gotten married too. So our International Ms. pageant is for married and unmarried women. And so I felt that was important to not have separate categories, because we don't take into account the typical married women questions of how do you run your family and how do you keep a happy marriage? We don't ask those questions, which are both important questions. But so International Ms. has now operated for about 5 years as well. And that is my full-time career now, is being director for both these programs.
And that's a fascinating insight. Can we just go back to the beginning? When you first entered pageantry, what did you think of it?
For me, it was an outlet to get involved in my community, to stay motivated from a health and fitness standpoint, because we did have a swimwear category, and a way to meet new people, because I had just relocated to a different state. And I found pretty quickly that for me, it was similar to having been a professional cheerleader and the circle of people that you're around and the commitment. So for me, it was just an extension of what I had already been doing, except I only had to be in shape for the stage production. I didn't have to be in shape, and that much grind of what you're eating and how often you're working out. You only had to worry about that when you're actually competing. Versus being an NFL cheerleader, which was year round. That was your lifestyle, and constantly in the gym and constantly watching your figure. So for me, it's just a wonderful way, I think, for women to connect and to find a deeper meaning in what they do throughout their year.
Of course. Just to bring you up to date, Laura, with the comments. Now, do you know a Diamond McCullough?
It sounds familiar. No?
Okay, she's just said she's been appointed the title of Miss Grand Havelock, and basically her birthday's coming up. She just wants you to say happy birthday, Diamond.
Happy birthday, Diamond. Best wishes in your title.
And Christy Peppers here has said, great job, Laura Clark.
Christy's one of my friends from DC.
Right, guys, I can see a load of you are watching. So if you want to ask Laura any questions, this is your chance. Put them in the comments below. If you just want to write nice comments about her, then you can put those in as well. I'm sure she'd appreciate it, and I will pass them on. Laura, can you just give us an insight into the life of a director? Obviously, I've interviewed over 100 queens now. I know quite well what goes on behind the scenes and the preparation. But in terms of being a director, for 2 systems, and then on top of that, being a director in 2020, and you've just hosted a virtual pageant,
Right.
how much time does it take? Because I gotta say, that sounds like a lot of time, a lot of potential headaches, and a lot of things could go wrong. So can you give us an insight into sort of the daily life of a director?
Yeah. And I had a baby in April. So I think that the beauty
Seriously?
yeah, I had a pandemic baby. Anyway, so clearly as a woman who's 40 and married and has a family, that is my priority, which I think is what's beautiful about being in a business ownership. You know, you do get the choice of what you do every day and when you schedule things. I am blessed that we're to the point that I have a wonderful team of people who are in the USA, who are state directors, who are, you know, working their own territory or their own responsibilities. So first and foremost, I just look at each month, each year, you know, where we are in the year, the season, as to what is a priority, because I lived my 20s and early 30s grinding day in, day out, you know, late night hours, as you're probably very familiar with. You know, when you're building a business, you have to put in all those extra hours. So I think for a pageant director, it really depends where he or she is in their career, because it does take a lot of work on the forefront to build your brand, to do marketing and attract your viewership and your participants and your team. So now I'm really blessed that I get to, you know, vacation if I want to, take a 4-day weekend. But if it is the 4 weeks prior to a national pageant, that doesn't happen, because I can't even get my mind off of the list of things that have to be done. And in our industry, it's very last minute. You know, you can plan and plan and plan, but then all of a sudden things will change. People will drop their responsibilities, new opportunities will come up. So during those last 4 to 6 weeks prior to a national pageant or an international pageant for International Ms., I am very dedicated to the team and who is completing their responsibilities. But I do, you know, have learned by now that balance is important, sleep is important, exercise is important, sunlight
Sleep is important.
Yes.
Yeah.
So I still have learned that I need to take time for myself and only overwork myself when absolutely necessary.
That sounds like a plan. Now, familiar face here, Mikkel has said,
Hi.
"Hi, Laura. Love seeing you
Yeah.
and miss you." Where is Mikkel at the moment? Is she in Serbia?
Yes.
That's
Yes. She just settled in Serbia.
right. It was coming back to me eventually. Laura, in terms of staying organized, because you've already identified you've got, I don't know how many responsibilities, and I'm sure in terms of a to-do list, I don't know if you could have a to-do list. I mean, it would cover an entire wall, but how do you stay organized and on top of everything?
So I am really big on to-do lists. And I think since I was a child, I've really loved making lists and, you know, that satisfaction of just crossing something off your list. There are personality types who are just like that.
I know.
So I do keep a to-do list, and I like to write things on paper. So I like to have things on a paper calendar, not in my phone, so I can open it and see it, and constantly going back to that list, because again, as a pageant director, you just have this constant list of what needs to be done in the last 4 weeks, what date it has to be finished, who you have to, you know, loop into the process. Because one of the hardest parts, I think, of being a pageant director is that my brain like knows everything, right? So sometimes I am the only person who can answer questions or who can tackle responsibilities, because it's almost impossible sometimes to relay all of that information to somebody else. And we try to compartmentalize and delegate, but at the end of the day, it's on my shoulders to make sure that it is done. But also having a to-do list or having a great team of people who are returning if it's not broken, don't fix it. Let's duplicate what we've done in the past that's been a success. And we just have a really great team of people who are responsible for getting all those things done too.
I mean, you mentioned that you had obviously had a business background before you went into pageantry. How important is it to you to run your systems as a business? And I don't mean that in terms of they don't have heart, but in terms of being organized and in terms of approaching the marketing from a business perspective. And I ask this because I know a lot of former queens have wanted, they've kept their eye on a directorship. When one opens up, they jump on it, but they're not prepared to run it as a business. They're not prepared for the business side of it. They think it's all going to be fun and games and quickly find out otherwise. So how important is it to you that you run it with the business side? How important is that to yourself?
Right. Well, it's important to remember that, like in any industry, there are people who are great at competing in pageants who may not be great at running a business. So I think, and then there are people who are great at running a business who maybe have never been in pageants, who just would be a great director. And so I really try to find people who have the pageant experience. Maybe they were a mother of a pageant contestant and really know the industry, right? So that's where I came from, a background from when I was in elementary, junior high. I knew I wanted to start a business. We would do, class projects, and I would jump right on the entrepreneur activities to start a homemade pancake business or whatever I started doing. And so I always had that in my mind that would be the ideal career for myself. And so running a pageant, of course, there are very successful directors who still look at their pageant career as a second business. I know pageant directors who are flight attendants, who are, mothers, obviously, who are doing another full-time job, and then they still manage their pageant very well. So I look at myself as being very blessed to have built myself to a position where this is my only career, but that's because that's what I want. And if other people find it, a different pathway to their directorship, that's great. But so yeah, absolutely. Doesn't mean that a pageant is not the right place for some people to compete, but for me, being able to answer emails, to answer phone calls every day, and keep a business running and run this and have it as a pageant, I think is a benefit to our contestants and to our staff as well, so that they can always know that I am thinking of the pageant, even if it's in 4 or 6 months away.
Absolutely. Now, another familiar face and another one of my interviewees, Corinne, has said, hi, Laura, love your organization. And Corinne is back stateside now. It's hard to keep up. I tell you, your international Miss Queens, they're all over the place. They're always doing something. In terms of we'll get to what you look for from your title holders, from your queens, but I just wanted to ask you, in terms of your state directors, and I guess in more general terms, people that you want to work with you, what do you look for before you have someone join your team?
So I guess our organization is at a point that experience is very important. So again, I'll say early on, I really just immediately approached people I knew who I thought had potential, right? So not necessarily someone who had been a pageant director, but I knew was trustworthy, was image presentable, carried themselves well, professional, and knew the pageant industry. So that was key for me at first. And so now that our organization has grown so much and is at a different level of prestige, I definitely look for people who have been behind the scenes of a pageant, so that they know, just like you mentioned with somebody else who said, oh, I thought I wanted to do this, but it's a lot harder than I thought it was. It doesn't have to be hard. You just have to have the mindset to approach your job responsibilities as a director. And you also have to understand that you aren't the limelight. You aren't the person having, the photo shoots. You have to be ready to open the door. So what I run into a lot of times is that women are still competing. Not saying that's not bad, because who knows, I may compete again one day, but I think I look for people who are kind of finished with the competitions and ready to be a role model and mentor other people.
I interviewed a lot of queens who love being in the limelight, even if they appear to be introverted. They love being on the stage. So do you ever find it maybe a struggle with directors in particular, that they might still want that limelight? I mean, it's got to be difficult to let that go.
Right. Well, like I said, it's just sometimes you do find people who are on the brink of retiring or just came off of a really strong, recognized title, and they just maybe won't be ready, because being a director, you have to concentrate on that. Even if you have another career, you have a family. And I think the way it should be is, if you have a title, that's just, or if you're competing for a title, then that should be your focus in a lot of ways for that organization. And some pageants don't require that, so it might be a little easier for those people. But I mean, more often than not, I find that directors who, after they've had the initial conversation, after they witness what other directors in our organization are doing, they get it. And so we rarely bring on directors who aren't ready for the job, if we've done our checks and balances and fully prepared them for what they need to be doing. And there's a great income opportunity. That's also a big hurdle, I think, as a director, is you have to probably invest a little bit and be ready for, like any business, you have to be ready for a year or a couple of years where you're kind of barely getting by and you're not there to make an income. And eventually there is an income opportunity if you focus on the right things.
And Laura, how big is your team sort of at the moment as we speak?
So we have a national staff and a board of directors of about 10 people, women, all women on our board of directors. This is for Miss Earth USA. So I'll talk about Miss Earth USA and then International Ms. But so Miss Earth USA goes on to the Miss Earth competition, and we have 4 competition divisions. So each state director has to name 4 title holders of different age groups. And then, so our national board of directors manages the overall process, the branding and how we're preparing for the national pageant. Then we have state directors. So, gosh, I mean, maybe 15 or 20 state directors. We certainly don't have as many, in the USA, we've got 51 states and territories with DC plus territories, not including Puerto Rico and USVI and other territory opportunities. So we don't have all our states covered, but we do have directors who oversee multiple states. And then we have states that don't have any directors. They're just what we call at large. And the national office handles those states as well. So 15 to 20 state directors. And then for the International Ms. Pageant, it's pretty much me. And then I really do look to our title holders to be the marketing face of the organization to help with recruitment. And then I have a couple of great staff members who do assist on the International Ms. side, and we bring in like 6 staff members for the actual pageant. So it's a much smaller endeavor for International Ms.
Well, I mean, you say that you rely on your title holders to be the marketing force. Definitely, having interviewed both Mikkel and Corinne, I can tell you they do an amazing job of doing that. So props to them. Just before I ask you what you look for in a title holder, dare I ask, do you have any pet peeves when it comes to people on your team or working with state directors? Are there any particular things that really tick you off?
Right. So I think biting off more than you can chew is really the biggest thing, because people will have times of the year that you can just admit, I'm totally committed to my kid. He's in football season. I'm totally committed to this right now, and just understanding your time and your weaknesses, I think, as a director is important, because we can find, people with a team as big as we have, we can find people to do that job. Do you need us to recruit? Do you need us to do your marketing or find somebody or refer somebody for you? Because we want to assist, especially new directors, want to make them successful. So I think sometimes directors or, in any profession, we're scared to say that we need help. And so that's the biggest thing, is just to come up front, say, hey, that's not something I can tackle, or I need a little help so that we can all be successful. And then, otherwise directors, it's okay sometimes to just say, hey, this just didn't work out for me.
Yeah.
I'm going to resign, or I'm going to, no hard feelings. And I think it's hard for women and people sometimes to leave a career behind. And sometimes they just have to do. I haven't seen that happen very often. Usually we have really hardworking directors who they are great at everything.
Do you find in general that being a director is a bit of a thankless job, that people don't really know how hard your work you do? Okay. I just wanted to ask.
I mean, do they know how hard directors work? Maybe, but I used to call myself a perfectionist, and I used to think that was like something to brag about. And I found when I was an NFL cheerleader and working with our directors and getting a little higher up in the NFL cheerleading world, that done is better than perfect. Or sometimes you just have to say, hey, the day's over. The game is tomorrow, right? This is what it's going to be. And so I think some people have never been in that type of a role where they can understand that. And so they see like, well, why isn't she doing this? Or why hasn't this been done yet? And, you do come across, but being a thankless job, I've gotten to the point that I don't expect ever to be thanked. So, but when I do hear thank you, I mean, that's not why I'm here. I see the fruits of what we're doing in many ways. And so it's nice to be thanked, but I don't expect it.
I'm sure there are a lot of people listening to this who will now have picked up on that and will remember to thank maybe not necessarily yourself, but certainly the director. I call myself a recovering perfectionist. I don't know if that applies. It's like a recovering alcoholic. And
it takes some time to get past that.
It really does.
Point in your character, I think, and be okay with it. It really does. But once you do get past it, it makes life a lot easier, huh?
I think it applies to queens a lot as well. I mean, I know so many pageant contestants and pageant queens who are perfectionists as well. Every little thing needs to be in place. They will agonize over one Instagram post for 2 hours and then still not post it. So it's not just a directorship issue, it's also with your contestants, surely.
Right. Well, and I mean, when you are competing for, a title of that caliber, I don't want to say perfection gets you to that title all the time, but in some systems, it's so competitive, that you've missed, a couple points and all of a sudden. So, but that's a whole different conversation to talk about, like winning is not everything.
Of course. Now we've got a question here from Rafael Brian Marquez Pile. Hope I pronounced that correctly. I just want to ask Miss Laura about her reaction and opinion about virtual beauty pageant. This was something that I mentioned before. So obviously you've just run the Miss Earth USA system as a virtual pageant. I guess first question is, did you have to make the choice between doing it virtually and doing it in person?
So we had our national pageant, Miss Earth USA, scheduled originally for July in Las Vegas. And I was one of the biggest deniers of our situation for the longest time. It's going to happen. Everything's going to clear up. We, of course, learned in March the situation of our world. Our venue, the same way. Our venue ended up closing, casino, showroom property in Las Vegas, and they too, well, we're going to reopen, shows will come back. So I think everybody in our circle was very optimistic. And eventually it did come down to the property just was not open. So in the USA, different states have different rules. Based on the governor's rules. And, some things were opening. So you're seeing pageants happen in Florida, you're seeing pageants happen in Nebraska, but they were not authorized to happen in Nevada.
Yep.
So we very briefly considered uprooting the whole thing and moving it to a state that would allow us to have the pageant. And I think at that time, we just reflected and said, first of all, we had to have a representative to compete for Miss Earth. So that was our priority. And then our other age divisions, we just decided there was really no sense of urgency. All of their international pageants will not be happening because we have 3 other competitive divisions, Miss and Teen, that go on to their own international pageants, and those had not been scheduled. So we just delayed all those divisions, and we went ahead and gave women the option to compete in the USA virtual pageant, because we had about 10 candidates who were, this is their last year of eligibility. So we could have just appointed a delegate, but we had the team, we had a video team, we had editing, we were like, let's do it. And there's no book written on how to run a virtual pageant. There probably will be soon, but so in about 2 to 3 weeks time, we took our entries who wanted to compete or who wanted to just defer their title to the next national pageant. And we launched our virtual Miss Earth USA pageant, which happened the first week of August.
And how did you find the response? I know that a lot of queens that I've talked to, they said they didn't want to compete in a virtual pageant, so they would put it off to next year when hopefully they can compete in person.
Yeah.
Only because, as we mentioned, they like the performing, and doing it in front of a camera for them, it didn't have the same buzz. So overall, in terms of the general reaction to the virtual pageant, how have you found it?
Yes, well, I mean, when you're doing everything online, you do miss an element of that in-person charisma of some candidates. And I will 100% say there's going to be a candidate who will rank higher, who will win a pageant when she does it in person versus when she takes a virtual platform. So for us, that was very difficult to really, we did a lot of live chats with the girls, a lot of required them to do their own video work so you could really see them in motion, because unlike other pageants, our representative has to go on and compete for Miss Earth against 80 or 90 other countries. So we still needed to feel very confident in our delegate who won, and we've never met her in person. So
wow,
so I believe that some of the pageants that must do a virtual pageant can be very successful with that. You still have the platform, the women, the contestants, the girls, they still have a voice in today's day and age with technology. But I 100% agree with a lot of those contestants that say, hey, I'm just going to wait until I can actually be there in person. And so that's why we tried to give people both options, which has been, I think, well received. But again, there's about 10 of our contestants, but they have another division. That's the great thing about pageantry right now, is it may be your last year for that particular title, but there are other pageants, there are other titles, and hopefully we'll all resume normality soon.
Fingers crossed, all fingers crossed. Did you find that there were any sort of unexpected plus sides or bonuses to actually doing it virtually?
Right. So I think we've realized some things that we can do surrounding a national pageant that don't need to happen in person, right? So same thing like businesses right now who are realizing that, hey, maybe we all can work from home and be successful. There are fewer distractions and things like that. So the next time we have, and even in the state that we're in right now with the potential virus transmission and shortening a national pageant, we used to have an 8-day, 10-day national pageant. So can we shorten that and just for the next few years, make sure that there's less exposure. So we are going to in the future hold interviews virtually. For at least the next year, we're going to do that as a virtual Zoom room interviewing, or different, as directors and organizations, we put a lot of pressure on ourselves for the girls to arrive in person, and then we video them. So we video their introductions, we video behind the scenes and all these things that, my contestants have amazing phones. They've got these iPhone 11, and I'm like, how did you shoot that video? And they're like, yeah, I have the iPhone 11. So there are a number of projects, I think, that we can put in their hands and then edit things together. That would be a nice behind the scenes editing. So, I think that it will help us to, get a little bit more prepared so we're not so overworked and rushed when we actually get to pageant week.
I think that's interesting, and that's a point worth discussing, is you put sort of more of the onus on your contestants to do the work, and sometimes they will not do it so well, but I think other times they will do a better job than you ever could have imagined, even if it's just with their phones.
Right.
So I think that's a point well taken. Now, Laura, you've just got a couple of other comments here. I think there's a few people tuning in from the Philippines. So tuning in from the Philippines, I will say hello. Lindsay is definitely a great follow-up to Imani, and we've talked about the virtual pageant. When is the Miss Earth virtual pageant?
So, and this Miss Earth, which we've known for a few weeks now, has also decided to operate as a virtual selection process this year. Whereas a lot of international pageants, Miss World, we don't know about Miss Universe yet, but they've just said, we'll see you next year. they just skipped a year, essentially, right? Miss International. So Miss Earth, which it's a huge undertaking for them to decide to do that. And I'm very grateful that they did, because we're showing that your message as a title holder is important in your own countries, even if international travel is difficult and pretty much impossible. Right now, we still should have a voice. And there are a lot of new things that we can learn through this process. So we start, I guess it's Monday, technically, is when Miss Earth, September 21st. I think there are still some delegates in some countries being selected over the next week or 2 weeks, but the competition aspect actually starts on Monday, and then it goes through November 29th. So it's a little over 2 months of live streams, virtual chats.
Wow.
Yeah, and then they'll have an actual televised coronation final pageant on November 29th, which is televised in several countries.
Wow.
But nobody's going to meet. As far as I know yet, nobody will actually ever be meeting in person from our delegates.
Okay. I was just reading a bit about yourself in terms of what some of the delegates have said about you, and they've said that when they're one of your title holders, or when they're competing in your systems, that you really take quite a hands-on approach in helping your title holders prepare for the international system. Given that the international Miss Earth is going to be virtual, have you been able to help Lindsay prepare in the same way? Have you been helping her prepare in a different way, or do you have no idea what's going to be asked of her for the international competition?
Right. So things are totally different this year. They really are. Yeah. We have to submit, I think, 15 videos to the Miss Earth office.
Wow.
Right. Wow. So, you take a step back and say, okay, it's just like it used to be, where we're coordinating all your outfits and then we're sending you on a plane and saying good luck. We actually get quite a bit. I think as a national team, we have quite a bit more influence this year on her success. Not that she needs it, because she's got she's just a pro, has a future lawyer, full-time model. She is doing great. And also in the USA, even when Imani was based in Atlanta, based in Georgia, and then our national team, I was based in Washington, D.C., I wouldn't see her, maybe more than once during her planning process. Yep. So we, set up pageant coaches, we set up stylists and wardrobe sponsors, and coordinate those meetings where we don't always have a national team member there in person. So on that side of things, it hasn't been too different. But on the video side, we're really trying to assist her as much as possible to have a team helping her coordinate the videos with the backgrounds and the various requests that are required, and the editing. So we're really excited about what we're producing on that level.
You've got to have a fantastic video editing team, because I edit videos myself. I know how much time it takes. So you must have an absolutely phenomenal team behind you helping with that.
Well, I mean, we hope so. You can only put forward your best work. I think it's been, they've already released some of the introduction videos. So if you go to the Miss Earth YouTube page or Facebook page, we produced a 2-minute introduction video. And I actually did get to go back to the USA and help Lindsay in person and be there, which was great. But you can see the various limitations, I would say, of where we are right now, because some countries, you're not going to be able to travel and go to the best background or the landmarks and things in some countries. And so for us in the USA, we're really trying to pinpoint the best backgrounds, the best settings, and work with that, as well as the editing can always be done. You've seen that with various productions that have been, The Voice and whatever, productions that have gone on in the USA entertainment industry, that they've just produced everything from in-house, and the technology is pretty strong. So hopefully you're great. I'm sure you do all your editing at home, right?
Yeah. Right on this computer right here. I was going to say, if all else fails, you just use the green screen. I mean, you can't actually wear a green gown.
I was like, I'm going to build a green screen in my living room for the kids to play with.
It's not difficult. If you have a spare wall behind you, just paint it green, or literally a piece of green cloth, and then you can put your title holder wherever you want. Just make sure it's well done, because if it's not well done, it looks it's like a bad superhero movie. Now, Neri here has said, good luck to the whole team of Miss Earth USA. And I believe this might be one of your previous contestants. Hi, Laura. Of course, thank you for everything. This is Leanna Marguerite. Virtual interview process was seamless, so I'm excited about that aspect for future contestants. Do you think there's a possibility of additional virtual chats/events that could feed into scoring and getting to know the women outside of Pageant Week?
So we already had, I think, with both Miss Earth USA and International Ms., an element of they produce their own videos, or we do chats on social media. And so that's, anything additional that we do as far as events, that's also been a challenge, I think, because of COVID right now. Is we've usually said, hey, you need to go do appearances, and you need, plan your own events. So I think it's just a mindset change, and we find value, especially in technology and social media and videos right now, because we do expect our title holder to take on that responsibility, to post stories to her Instagram, to, address her fans via, in her bedroom or living room. So yeah, I see with pageants that being a big part of an integration moving forward. Yeah,
I completely agree with you there. Guys, I can still see a bunch of you are watching. So if you have any more questions for Laura, make sure you put them in so that I don't miss them. You don't miss your chance. Laura, I just want to backtrack. I was going to ask you this, and then we got onto that, what we were talking about. But in terms of title holders, what do you look for with your title holders? I'm sure this is a question that you've been asked a billion times, but I feel like I have to ask it.
So I think loyalty is a big thing right now. We live in a world where there are a lot of distractions, where there's always the next best pageant, right, for them to launch, into. And, when you win a title, you need to be committed for the year. Not to mention that it's always my goal that we have a title holder who will continue to want to be involved in the organization, who doesn't look at this as just like, I'm going to have a crown for a year and then I'm going to go do this pageant, or I hope to eventually win this title. I think that the programs that I'm involved in have great merit, and they should want to be a bigger part, not necessarily a director or a national team member, but the best thing I can have out of a title holder is a legacy. So she continues to stay involved. She continues to recommend the program, give advice as to how to expand. Then, eventually you have to hand it over to the judges. And I run my systems very fairly. And so I try to develop a scoring system that's very well-rounded so that we can capture her whole personality and her whole capability.
Yeah. I think that's very well put. I remember reading somewhere as well, and we've had issues. I've discussed with other directors and other queens the issue of someone who wins a title and then puts a crown on her head and then does nothing. You never hear from her again until basically handover, and someone worded it as not just that it's a shame, but that actually has stolen that opportunity in many ways from the other contestants who would have done a lot more with it. So is there any way for you as a director, because obviously you've got the scoring system, and as you said, you have to be ultra fair. Is there any way to account for that in the judging system?
I mean, only if the judges ask those types of questions, you know,
Right.
what's going to happen in 6 months when you are tired of doing the work, right? But, you know, in anything in life, it's you fake it till you make it, and you say things to get yourself into that position. Politicians say things to get themselves elected, and then, you know,
Yep.
where are they left in a few years or months? So yeah, it is very difficult. And that's, again, I think virtual pageant versus in person. I think in person, you can feel the sincerity of people. I have a national director group that I am a part of on Facebook that we only recently started chatting about different things. And it has been thrown in the mix that all of our contestants should have referrals submitted from previous directors.
Oh,
Not
wow.
necessarily that that's required. So it either has to be a previous director of your pageant history, or, you know, an employer or somebody who has, when you're talking about a big, you know, responsibility for your title, going on to an international pageant or holding that title for a year. So I haven't implemented that, but that might be something, because it's, I don't know. I mean, you just never know what to expect. Also, you have to get into the mindset, I think, of a title holder. And we all get burned out, you know, what's going to motivate them. So I think as a director, you have to sit face to face to them or talk to them personally and say, you know, what is your motivation? What do you want to do this time of year? Where do you need our help? And hopefully keep them engaged for their whole reign.
Of course. But that idea of a referral system, I know another director who floated that as a joke. And everyone thought, oh, you can't possibly do that. But I actually love it, because that's what you would do if you were interviewing for a job, right? A high-flying job, or even just an entry-level job, you need a referral. So, and I think winning a title in many ways, you're winning a year of service, is the way I've heard it.
Right.
And if you want that title, then you need a referral to back it up. So what are the chances? Was that just a late night, someone threw it out there, or what are the chances of that actually happening?
Well, I mean, you have to think of the time commitment. Then somebody's responsibility is to read and collect all the referrals, right? And so just like any job that or any corporate situation, it's like, well, okay, well, who's going to do that? So we'll see if that ever comes to fruition. But title holders should also remember that we do, you know, as directors, we do talk to each other. And it has happened where another director has seen someone in my program and contacted us and said, you know, she seems great, but you should know this. And I think that it's hard, I think, as a pageant director, to keep that fairness. As you mentioned, how can the judges know that? Well, a lot of times they can't. So that's a big hurdle for us.
That's one of the hugest hurdles that I've identified, and I don't know how you handle it as a director, because unless you literally kick the person out or prevent them from competing, and it's very difficult because you might not be able to tell them why you're doing it, then the judges may have absolutely no idea. So I certainly don't.
And everyone deserves a second chance too. So just because a previous organization didn't work in their favor, they didn't, you know. Yeah, so they deserve the chance to fairly compete and win the next title.
Absolutely. Now, Laura, just in terms of the awards, this is one of the things I just have on my other screen here on the Pageant Planet, the list of awards that you've won, both for yourself as a director and the systems. There's a load of awards. I won't get you to go through them all, but are there any particular awards that you've won that you sort of have felt more deeply about, that have meant more to you than some of the others?
So each award program operates in a different way, right? So Pageant Planet has evolved. Pageant Planet is one of our biggest media resources in the world, if not, you know, in the USA. And so the way that they were selecting awards one year, you know, this past year, it's been totally different. And I know that this past year they worked on referrals, they worked on reviews. And previously, they would just, I think, have their own internal panel decide, oh, here's the best pageants,
Right.
here's the directors. And so I'm happy with the way that they've kind of put it into their users, their voters' hands. And I think that's the proper way to do it. So I was really pleased that Miss Earth USA ended up being selected as the best pageant in the USA. And also, it's very common for people to say, well, what about Miss USA? Leading into Miss Universe. So somewhere out there, let's face it, Miss USA doesn't need to be ranked. People are just going to go to that program.
Yeah, sure.
But, our smaller, less major pageants really appreciate to be ranked to those lists. And so this year, having been named best pageant for the United States was really fulfilling. And it's just very hard to maintain that position year in, year out. So I'm happy that we were able to get that this past January.
Just going back to the comments, Neri here has said, for example, our delegate didn't make it or win on the international finals. How do you cope with it? Would it be difficult for you to cope with not winning? I mean, with Miss Earth USA, obviously the USA has done very well in Miss Earth. So, I mean, do you feel any level of disappointment if you don't win, or are you just cheering for the girl? How do you deal with that?
So, I mean, that's always something you have to face. It doesn't matter how highly ranked your delegate is. It doesn't matter how much you help prepare her or how highly regarded she was when she won our national pageant. You still have to go on to compete against 80, 90 other winners from their countries.
Yeah.
So you can only do the best that you can do. And I think it would be amazing. We've never won Miss Earth for the USA. We have ranked, to the top 4 and 1 elemental titles. I just really try not to put that much pressure on our delegates that, oh, you have to win, you have to win, because you can see other countries and you can see the pressure that they feel in their performance. You can see that, oh my gosh, if I don't nail this, if I don't, win this or rank or whatever, that you can just feel that they're feeling a lot of pressure in their performance that they give on stage. And so I never want my girls to feel that way. That being said, I think as a team, as a national team, every year we do all we can. I never want her to come back and say, well, I wish you would have done this, or your team dropped, should have had the support. We are the USA. We do have a number of sponsors. So she should feel 100% prepared entering that competition. I think it would be wonderful. I think it would be wonderful, the Miss Earth program. I think we would do a great job as the overall winner, but I never make it that's the be all end all. Yeah.
On that subject, do you know how Lindsay is feeling in the lead up? She speaks phenomenally well. I've interviewed a lot of queens who speak well, but she seems like a boss. Do you know how she's feeling in the lead up? She doesn't strike me as someone who would feel nervous.
I think, like everybody right now, she's just taking it week to week because there are so many requirements to fulfill. And she'll have her first official chat next week. She's very good at doing chats and doing media interviews, learning about the issues that are going on right now because it's ever changing, and learning how she can do better with conversations. So how she's feeling, I think, is probably a little overwhelmed, but again, it's the competition spreads out over 2 months for Miss Earth. So we just keep telling her, you got to worry about this. This is what has to be happening right now. And then we'll worry about, final answer and questions and things like that later on. Don't worry about that yet. And don't worry about what you're going to say during the U.S. presidential election or after the U.S. presidential election and different topics, because that's one of the biggest struggles, I think, in our industry is, well, how do I answer this question? What if I get asked a question that I can't answer, I don't know the answer to? And so you can't possibly be prepared 100% for perfection, right? Like we discussed, you can't be a perfectionist. What you can do is learn how to do better next time.
Now, remind me, when does a pageant end and when is a presidential election?
So the presidential election is on November 3rd. And then
Right.
Miss is on November 29th, the end of that month.
Okay.
Yeah.
So it's kind of slap bang in the middle. Well, that'll be interesting. I got to say though, if Lindsay is feeling only slightly overwhelmed, then I think she's doing very well, because I think
A good job of hiding it. If she's feeling any more overwhelmed, but I think she feeds off of our energy too, and we always, make sure she knows she's doing a great job.
Absolutely. Just a few more comments here. Forever and Again, Bridal and Beauty has said, supporting the young ones in the years to come as something that a title. Laura,
I got
can you
you
hear
back.
me?
Yes,
Got
I
me.
can hear you
Okay.
now.
That was weird. Okay, Lorraine here has said, Laura, thank you for what you do. I am so proud of how far Miss Earth USA has come in your direction. You inspire me, and I am grateful for you. And Neri has thank you for your answer, and Julie here has said, so happy I saw this post this morning. Thank you so much, Laura Clark, for being such an incredible example.
Thank you. Lorraine is actually the president of Miss Earth in the Philippines.
Oh,
Lorraine,
wow.
yeah. And they run an amazing program, and it's the 20th year. So to have envisioned something as big as Miss Earth and to have carried it forward for 20 years is a huge accomplishment. So we're excited.
Well, thank you for tuning in, Lorraine. I have to say, out of every pageant over the last 20 years, the Miss Earth system must have become the most relevant one in terms of its advocacy out of all of them. I mean, if it's not relevant now, then I don't know what is relevant. So I'm happy 20 years, Lorraine. In terms of vision, I wanted to ask yourself, Laura, that as well. So in terms of what your vision is for Miss Earth USA, and what is your vision for International Miss? Can you run us through that? How far it extends? I don't know if you've got your vision for a year, 5 years, 10 years, or just stay as it comes.
Well, for International Ms., I want to just continue to bring in the caliber of women that we have. I think that when I began International Ms. 5 years ago, I felt that the industry was very lacking for those age groups. And I do believe now there have been many other programs who have realized that, hey, these are ages you should pay attention to. And so titles established for Ms. and Mrs., ages increasing, and a number of evolving programs in the industry. So for International Ms., again, I just make sure that the grant opportunity and to elevate the program and give those opportunities. So then for Miss Earth USA, I feel like we're on track to be named within the top 2-3 programs in the USA, and to elevate the Miss Earth cause within the United States, because as you mentioned, the Miss Earth program, or Miss Earth cause of environmentalism, is extremely relevant. And so I would like to continue to expand our media exposure and our message, and the work that doing in their community.
Laura, sorry, we're just losing you a little bit. I think it might be your internet connection. We just wait a little bit for it to stabilize. We sort of heard you in bits and drabs. Can you hear me okay?
I can't hear you.
Okay. We'll just keep an eye on the connection and make sure that it stabilizes. Can you just repeat what you said, like the last couple of sentences about Miss Earth, in terms of what you saw your vision for Miss Earth USA, and we'll see if the connection lets you actually come through this time.
Sure. So what I envision with Miss Earth USA for the next few years is to elevate the pageant within the industry, and I think we're on track for that. So we're highly recognized as a well-known national pageant now. The Miss Earth mission to impact environmentalism, for people to realize that they have the responsibility in their own homes, in their lives. That's what our title holders are able to impact the most. And so I want to continue to allow that to happen and grow.
Absolutely. Okay, now I just keeping an eye on the time. I've kept you on for an hour already, so I don't want to keep you here forever. Just before we move to the final 10 questions, because I always finish my interviews with the same 10. Just quickly, what do you do to relax? Do you have any time to relax? Do you have any hobbies? Do you have any weird indulgences when you're not in pageant business mode?
Yeah. Well, we live by a lake, so I love being next to water and just seeing water, walking, and not necessarily swimming, but I'm not a good swimmer. Yeah, but just the scenery that is around me where I live, just getting outside and getting exposed to that is what I try to do every day, if not every couple of weeks.
Sounds good. And finally, shout outs. It's probably impossible for you because you'd probably forget someone. So do you want to risk offending someone by leaving them out, or do you want to just say, you know who you are? That's what I've advised everyone else, is just, you know who you are, because then you don't miss anyone out. But any thanks or shout outs?
I definitely want to shout out to you for what you're doing and the interviews. I've been watching a lot of your interviews and your goals in the pageant industry. So thank you for doing that and being a great interviewer. And I shout out to Corinne Devon, International Ms., and Mikkel Reed Carroll. Again, going back to International Ms., these women are both very busy and they have done phenomenal in their jobs. And when I said, hey, you're going to have to keep your title another year, they both just said, great, let's do it. And so, we've talked about some of our other title holders and directors and team members in my pageant organizations. But those people in particular, I want to say thank you.
I tell you, those two would wear out their sash. If there was such a thing, they would wear out their sash. Not only can I not keep up with where they are in the world, but they're always doing something. I love it. Yeah. Definition of a hardworking queen. Okay, Laura, as a director, your turn to answer the final 10 and to show your contestants, past, present, and future, how it's done. It's not a speed round. I need to clarify. You don't need to answer them as quickly as you can. But if you want to, go for it. Okay, so final 10. First question, what is your favorite word?
Sleep. I don't think I need to say anything else, but I've learned to really enjoy my sleep.
What, you mean you didn't enjoy sleep before, or you just didn't get any?
There were a lot of years I didn't think it was required. So now it is. Yeah, I love it.
Okay, got it. Question 2, what is your least favorite word?
Amazing. Honestly, that's the word I'm trying to cut out of my vocabulary.
Is that because you just say it too many times?
What does amazing mean? It's just overused. So. Okay.
I can tell you, having interviewed a lot of UK-based queens, their equivalent of that is fabulous. It's always fabulous. Everything is fabulous.
Through my head as well, but we'll keep fabulous without amazing.
Okay. All right. Question 3, in life, what gets you excited or what turns you on?
Especially right now, it's travel. So any opportunity to cross the border. And even before, I have gotten the opportunity to visit maybe 30 countries. So I was spoiled in my 20s getting to travel quite a bit to be part of the NFL cheerleading tours of military bases. And so I really got a bug then. So traveling is something that, embracing new cultures and seeing different parts of the world is really important to me.
Have you ever made it down to Australia?
No, I know it's definitely on the list.
It may be a while before. Oh no, you're in Switzerland, so maybe you are allowed in Australia. I don't think Americans are allowed in many countries. I think there's a few jokes about that at the moment. We'll move on from that. Question 4, what turns you off?
Probably clutter or and not just like in your physical surroundings of clutter, just in your life, in your brain. So just thinking of like and I've come to a point in my life that I have to say no to a lot of things that just aren't going to fit my goals right now. And that way you're only concentrating on your family, your career, aesthetics, your health, and getting all the clutter out.
Yeah. We were talking about to-do lists before. Do you find that writing your to-do list helps reduce the mental clutter, just getting it out on paper?
Yes. And I've been known to be a little bit of an insomniac. So to wake up, especially when you're receiving messages from multiple time zones, like,
oh yeah,
big goal of mine right now is put it on a to-do list, maybe on your bedside table. Don't let it continue to run through your brain, and tackle it tomorrow.
And now I see why you don't get any sleep. Question 5. What sound or noise do you love?
What sound? Silence. So, I think we're seeing a common theme here of relaxation. Yeah, I have a 5-month-old baby and a 2.5-year-old daughter. And when they go to sleep, the silence is beautiful.
I was going to say that the common theme seems to be things you can't have. Silence, because you just had a new baby. Sleep. It's all the things that you wish you could have, but you don't have at the moment.
Ask me again in a year and you'll probably get totally different answers.
Okay. Question 6 then is, what sound or noise do you hate?
Do I hate? What sound or noise? Well, immediately I think of fingernails on a chalkboard. Have you ever heard that?
That is probably the most common answer I get to that. I was going to take a guess that you were going to say that the sound of your child screaming or crying.
That's inevitable. You've learned to expect that. But the other answer I might say is the phone ringing, because I'm not a big phone talker. I prefer texting and emails most of the time. So when the phone rings, it's like, oh, shoot. Something really important. Or it's a spam call or somebody I don't want to talk to, usually.
It's funny you mentioned that, because I've run my own business for over 20 years. I currently have my phone permanently switched to ignore, because I feel if anyone needs to get a hold of me, they can message me. And the other 80% is all spam calls. And as you said, people I don't want to talk to anyway. So I don't use my phone as a phone anymore.
Right.
Question 7. If you could have any one superpower, what would you pick and why?
To duplicate myself.
Just once?
Well, you're right. I was told by the owner of Pageant Planet, Stephen Roddy, many years ago, two or 3 years ago, I don't know. He said, the best thing you can do for your business is to find somebody to essentially duplicate yourself and to train somebody else. And that way, and that's exactly what he's done and how he's built his business, is my impression. And so if I could have that superpower, I would clone, not to say that I do everything perfectly by any means, but just the brain power of one person running a pageant is pretty hefty. Yep.
That would be a dangerous power to have, because I don't think you'd stop at one. I don't think any of us would stop at one, especially those who own their own business.
Well,
we just keep going.
It's going to be a weaker version or an imperfect version. We already know we're not perfect, so that's fine. We can do that a few times.
That's fair enough. Okay, question 8. What job or occupation other than your own would you most like to attempt?
Maybe a video editor. I'll have to be honest, I really enjoyed doing this virtual project and continuing to do it. And I'm not the video editor on any of this, but seeing the capabilities and being there in person when we had the green screen pop up and they've all of a sudden put her in New York City, it's like, oh my God. I think to have that power and the capabilities, I would, and my, seclusion without having to answer the phone, my insomnia and all those things, I think would play in really, really well to a future in video editing.
It would. I mean, if you told me that before we jumped on the interview, I could have actually triggered a green screen effect on you right here. This software can put you wherever you want. So
Yeah.
next time. Question 9. What job or occupation would you definitely not like to attempt?
A teacher. I think, again, my daughter, my oldest is only 2.5, and I am so grateful for her teachers. And she comes home speaking sentences and speaking French. And, I just look forward. I'm like, next week you're going to learn the alphabet, honey. There you go. So I think, we have to embrace those lessons at home as much as we can. But I don't have the patience to be a teacher. And shout out to all the teachers doing the online training out there right now.
Yeah, absolutely. I think teachers have always been a little bit underappreciated, and never more so than at the moment. Just remind me, in Switzerland, there's French and German, isn't there?
Right, where we live, they speak French because we are near the French border, and so as you go a little bit more toward like Zurich, they are speaking German, which makes it very difficult to travel through Switzerland as well, because you think you've learned all you need to know, and now it's different when you get to a different part of Switzerland. I will also say in Switzerland, they pay their teachers full salary, high salary. So there's very little turnover, and education is also very expensive. So preschool and daycare is very expensive because they do pay their teachers and give them health care and make sure they're educated and happy.
Right. I wish we could say the same here in Australia. Unfortunately, they're on the lower end of the spectrum, and I think that causes a few of the issues that we have. Final question. If heaven exists, what would you like to hear God say when you arrive at the pearly gates?
Welcome. Here's a glass of wine. I don't know.
What sort of wine would you like? Is it white, red, sparkling, rosé?
I enjoy Pinot Noir. Do you have that in Australia? I know it's a very regional wine.
You can have horrible wine in Australia, and I think it still tastes good for anywhere else. So you're spoiled for wine down here. You can't pick a bad one.
Yes. And also just to be, reunited with all our loved ones, grandparents and dogs and everyone that we've missed over the years. That'll be nice one day.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, Laura, that's about it. Thank you so much for your time.
Thank you.
Really appreciate you taking time out of your busy schedule. I will keep you on the line for just a second whilst I hang up with the audience. But thank you to everyone for watching and posting your comments, whether it's live or on the replay. And we will speak to you next time.
Hey guys, it's Adrian again. If you like this video, make sure to like and subscribe, and remember to head over to pageantlaunch.com and join the launch team for our pageant review site. All you need to do is put in your email address. Thanks, and speak to you next time.